I'm Kerry Brown. I'm at the University of Sydney China Studies Centre, which I direct. Previously, I was at Chatham House, where I was head of Asia programme. And last year, I wrote a book on Hu Jintao, largely because he is the least understood major leader in the world, and I just wanted to try and understand a little bit more about his legacy and his importance, because he is worth understanding, and not much has been written about him. Well, since Hu Jintao came to power in 2001, 2002, we have a contradiction. We have a country getting richer and richer, 4 times the size of its economy now than it was in 2001, and yet a country getting more and more contentious. And so Hu has had to try and articulate a vision of society where you balance different interests, you create stability, and you create sustainability. So his 2 main contributions really are harmonious society, trying to feed on strands of Chinese philosophy, Chinese thinking about the balance between people, the balance between man and nature, taking people as the key, and trying to deal with this conflict in society that's been rising. And the second is really, the ideas of sustainability, of moving just away from pumping out GDP growth. Despite all of this sort of big, attempt to, balance these, we have to say that the Hu Jintao period has seen incredible, increases in GDP growth. It's been a big, big success, and you can't take that away from him and his leadership, and yet it's a society going through profound and very unpredictable changes. And so we have a sort of idea that he has kind of parked political reform, meaningful political reform, for the next generation. He has just made China richer and richer. The leadership transition between Hu Jintao and the 4th generation and the next generation, now we know around Xi Jinping, it was always something that created some worry, because in many ways China hasn't done this before the People's Republic. I mean, each leadership transition has been different, and there are nervous periods. So last year, 2012, was a very difficult year because of the fall of Bo Xilai, who was a Politburo member, because of all of the issues about the involvement of his wife in the murder of a British businessman. I mean, all sorts of things created unforeseen problems. And I suppose we can look at Hu Jintao and the way he left power being more complete than maybe we originally expected. This seems to me that he has given up his position on the Central Military Commission. He's left the party position now last November, and he will no longer be president of the country by March, April of 2013, and so he's completely leaving the stage. I suppose the only thing we can say about that is that he was an amazingly self-effacing politician, and so it's not surprising that he is just seeming to depart. However, structurally, Chinese politics doesn't allow easy departures unless you go unwillingly, and so I'm sure that he will figure in the story of China in the next months and years. Well, the tradition, although it's not a very long tradition, is that the leaders can choose the next but one leaders. So the idea is that Jiang Zemin has chosen the leadership around Xi Jinping much more than we expected, and that therefore Hu Jintao has a number of people like Hu Chunhua, Sun Zhongcai, people like this who are very close to him. Li Keqiang is actually quite close to him as a protege in a way, and so these people are going to, be very, very influential, important in the 6th generation leadership. But I think Hu Jintao's personality was a very sort of modest one, very non-egotistical, and so in many ways it's always been very hard to see where he's had influence and where he sort of backed away. He has, on the whole, been silent about some of the big issues, China's international issues, some of its major kind of problems. He really didn't say a great deal, and especially we see this over problems with Japan, or problems with the United States, problems over the environment. Hu Jintao has been very silent, which is why I called the book The Silent Ruler. What we can say is that he made a big contribution towards the cross-strait relations with Taiwan. There did put his neck on the line, and so that may well be part of his sort of future interest to kind of maintain interest in the sustainability of that agreement. I think fundamentally the social contract, is that the party has to promote growth, and I think the ways in which it promotes growth in the future are going to be more complicated. They're not just about producing very good raw figures. It's really a country with great inequality, and though Hu Jintao and the leaders around him tried to address that, it's now as unequal as it was 10 years ago. There's an issue between the balance between urban and rural. It's an urbanizing country going through big sort of, social changes, structural changes, and really a leadership that sort of needs the political capital and strength to deal with some of these tough socio-political issues that need to be decided in the future. Hu Jintao didn't touch any of these major complex socio-political issues really. No extension of village elections to the township level. No real attempt to, really create a robust rule of law. So some people criticize him and say that he was the leader who, in Chinese Wu Wei, did nothing. And others say that he was a leader who led just by rhetoric. One of the interesting things with the new leadership around Xi Jinping is trying to speak in a different way. That Hu Jintao's language was very, kind of official, very formal, no real kind of emotional content, and didn't really meet, sort of the expectations of people about how their leaders can talk to them and just try and connect with them a bit more. Hu Jintao's legacy, I think, is two things. The first is amazing growth of Chinese economy, so facilitating growth, and also to create stability for that, so dealing with Taiwan through agreements with the Taiwanese government on, kind of trade. The not so good thing is, real kind of stagnation over political reform. And so we have the good and the bad. Great growth, but no real big reforms. That'll be left to the next generation.